Lemkin Solitaire and Equalizer seeders and planters offer disruptive innovation like vertical banding, dry and or liquid onboard fertilizer, and great prices. Go to lemkindemo.com for more information and to request a demo.
Welcome to The Truth About Ag. Welcome to the Truth About Ag podcast, distributed under the Real Ag Media Network and powered by the Heber Group of Companies. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Today, we are switching it up. I am on my own today, and I had to scrounge and cry and just plead for somebody to come on here with me. And Shaun, you are the answer.
It's called the bottom of the barrel.
It is the bottom of the barrel. So, yeah. And I also realize you've probably been talking nonstop for the last few days about politics and elections and tariffs. So I want to get away from that for a little bit here, at least. We can touch on that later if you want. But for me, I want the story of the real Shaun Haney. Give me your background. I know nothing about you, Shaun. I mean, we're in business together right now, and I honestly couldn't tell you where you grew up or any of your story. So give me the story.
Most people don't even know where. That's the funny part. I travel so much. I'm all over the place, here, there, wherever. And people are like, "You're from Winnipeg, right?" No. You're from Ontario? No. Saskatchewan? No. Alberta? Yes. So I did grow up in southern Alberta. Picture Butte, Alberta, to be exact. Feedlot capital of Canada. Fourth or fifth. I think it's the fifth largest cattle feeding region in North America. And grew up at a family farm, seed operation. So I kind of cut my sales teeth selling certified seed and canola seed to farmers in the region. We had a feed yard, kind of a what now would be considered a small background yard, but at that time we finished cattle. We had I think maximum capacity about 8,500 head.
Okay.
And but we. I didn't have any intention of going back. I really, I was a pretty, like I said to many people, very unmechanically inclined farm kid.
Welcome to the club.
I'll challenge anybody. Like literally, I will. If there was like a non-mechanic Olympics, no. I am for sure the Canadian gold medal winner. I'm taking it home. So. I originally had intended to, after university, I took a finance degree from the University of Lethbridge. I had intended to actually go to law school, and went back to the farm just to work and pass some time. And I was married, and I wanted to get into intellectual property law, and didn't have to write the LSAT.
You decided to take a hard right turn somewhere in there?
It makes no sense, right? Like talk about not having a bloody clue what you're going to do. You just knew you didn't want to be back at the farm. Yeah. Because, and the part of the reason is probably the insecurity, the fact that I wasn't very good at fixing anything. Or I love running combine. I have terrible allergies. What a wuss. If you were to draw the script of who would not, I think
you're it.
Kid that's not coming back, right?
I was coming back, but that doesn't mean I was any more inclined to do repairs than what you're doing.
Yeah, and it just drove my dad crazy that I didn't know how to fix anything or do just not even an interest in it, right? So I came back and started working in the office at the farm, and all of a sudden 2 years later I'm still there, and we've got a kid, and law school just seemed like far away. It changes. Life takes different paths, and kind of maybe shows that I wasn't as committed to the idea of, I wasn't maybe as into law. I was saying I wanted to be a lawyer, I was going to do this, but maybe I wasn't as committed as I thought, because I really didn't clearly try to by even writing the LSAT. So
that's why I'm a recovering accountant now, is I wasn't really committed to it.
Yeah, well, I always say I'm a recovering seed grower, which gets great laughs in front of seed grower audiences when I give speeches and stuff like that. But I have always loved, and it drives my wife crazy, I think, I love listening to talk radio. I like nonstop. It could be sports, it could be politics, it's news. I am listening. I'm an auditory learner, and so I am listening to something all the time. So it's a real fight in the vehicle when we're trying to drive somewhere, and I want to listen to Bloomberg radio, and she wants to listen to some sort of country music. But so I think I kind of landed where I was meant to be. I have one of the greatest jobs right now in Canadian agriculture. I get to see agriculture through all the different nooks and crannies, and I just look, the things that in a week, the people I get to talk to, and the questions I get to ask, and there's so much variety. And it's in Canada and the U.S. I just feel so lucky.
Well, and I laugh because 2 years ago when we were big into the speaking, I think I put 89,000 K on my WestJet Silver plan. And honestly, I was miserable. I hated travel. And all of a sudden I'd start seeing you at all these events and I'm like, he's everywhere. So how do you manage it, I guess, is be my question. Because every time I see you, you're somewhere and you're leaving for somewhere else.
Yeah, it's so. I think at the beginning, when I first started, it was just cool. Like it was neat. I really liked the trade or the travel and the ability to just experience different areas of agriculture. And so, but after a couple cycles of that, you're like, you got to be able to get up to the fact that you're going to be in Brandon the third week of January.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's not like all the things we're going to are in Nashville, Palm Springs, and Mexico. We're going to some places where it's bloody cold in the middle of winter and travel is not fun. It's not like going on business travel. It's not like you're going on vacation.
Yeah.
You're working. And I would say that prior to the pandemic, I would get to about middle of March and I would turn bitter and grumpy and I just wanted to go home. And I promised myself when the pandemic happened, because it went from like 150 days on the road a year to 0, just instantly, right? I remember being at the it was the London Farm Show 2020. And that was the last show I went to before the pandemic. And as the lockdown started. And I remember when the shutoff happened, it was great. We had a great time as a family because this is what normal life is like. Like you don't get on an airplane on a Monday and come back on a Friday. And you actually have supper with your family. This is really fun. But I promised myself that I would never get bitter about the travel ever again. I would appreciate it more. I would really kind of reflect on how I was lucky to be able to have a personal connection with people that are fans of real agriculture all the time, and not take that for granted and just appreciate it. And how we did it, honestly, is I really do mean this, Evan. My wife made it happen. Okay, we had 3 young kids. I was gone all the time. She's trying to get the kids to baseball and hockey and going in 3 different directions across a wide geography, and she's doing that all by herself. And I come in the weekend, I'm like the fun dad, and show up when the games are going on and don't see any practice. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That did not happen without her. So I think it's incredibly important that that is recognized, because this real agriculture isn't allowed to get to this point without her being as flexible and understanding as she was and is.
And it honestly, from our standpoint, that's probably why we even started the podcast a little bit, is just the travel. I couldn't do it anymore. And for that reason, like you said, you're gone Monday to Friday, sleeping out of a hotel, eating food that I don't want to eat. And then you come home and it's like you're a stranger all of a sudden, right?
Well, and you're into lifting and stuff too, right? And fitness. And so that is bloody hard. It is, and you have to compromise a little bit, where it's like, okay, listen, dumbbells only go to 50 pounds in the hotels usually. Now, Hilton line of hotels, they do go up to 75 now, just everybody that's aware of all this kind of stuff. But you have to sort of drop your expectations about what you're going to get done in a week. And, and then there's also how important is sleep? So do I really want to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to say that I got to lift to hit the gym? That there's that kind of balancing. And to be honest with you, all that's fine. But what is really the most important is trying to manage your food intake and stuff like that on the road, because it's really easy to have 4 or 5 pints of beer every night and a glass of wine. And, it like people at farm shows would be like, oh, you coming out tonight? I'm like, no. Like, why? It's like a farm show. Like, I'm like, this is
day
like,
one.
listen, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I got a good friend that always says you don't win the Stanley Cup in game one. And so you just kind of get maybe a little bit older and a little bit more disciplined in it, but trying to manage the energy, because when you hit the stage as a keynote speaker, or you're doing interviews on a day, throughout the day. You need energy, and you need the ability to deliver. The audience expects that. They do not care that you were out with clients probably way later than you should have been, and doing whatever you were doing, and having too many beers or whatever. They expect you to perform and be on your game, and so you got to do that.
Yeah, and see, for me, it was always the adrenaline spike. Like I could be tired, I could be hungover, I could be whatever, but you put me up on stage, and I was fine, I was good. But then as soon as I came off, it was just like you just right into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, but you enjoy the speaking. It's just it's just the travel part that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the coaching and stuff has helped, because everybody comes to me now, which is even better in Saskatoon. So I get to do a bit of the public speaking just in my own groups, right? So
but I do really, like, obviously I do a lot of talking to a wall or an imaginary audience on a daily basis, or through the digital platforms like this.
Yeah.
But it's also different, and I think special to have that personal connection where you're looking at faces and you see how they respond to the material. I was really fortunate through this winter where I had a couple weeks where I had 3 keynotes in 3 days in 3 different cities, and it allows you to really
same one, right?
Yeah, you're really seeing how different geographies respond to the same comments or the same takes, and you kind of get to understand in those conversations afterwards. See, like I try not to anymore be the person that flies in, flies out. Like, I really try to, like, okay, I'm going to work the room afterwards, and I'm going to talk to some of the audience, because they probably want to talk to me, and so I want to learn from them. And that's where you really understand the audience, is where, people, I didn't ask a question, but I got something to tell you, right?
Well, and that's what the first year I did it, I realized I never went anywhere. So I'd hit the airport to the hotel, do the keynote, back to the airport, and I'm gone. And I was like, I've been in 13 different cities and I haven't left the airport or the hotel. So that my last year, I started doing a little bit of venturing out, just at least to say I did it.
Yeah. I was in Ames, or I was in New York, or I was in, I went to this. Oh, hey, you were in Miami? Yep. I was at the Hyatt, and I was at the airport, and I Ubered between the two. And, those are like, we sound like we're not sure if we're bragging or bitching here.
Oh, no.
But
I've flown through LA twice, and all I've seen is outside the airport. So
yeah.
So let's move into Real Ag. So what inspired you, I guess, to actually start it? I mean, what did you see in the industry that you wanted to fill, or was this just a pet project that just turned into what it has today?
Yeah, I think it was I think the reality, that's a good question. So I'd probably say more like pet project. I would say it's a hobby that turned into a career. While I was maybe toiling with the idea of being a lawyer, I remember grade 11 or grade 12, my parents sitting me down and having like the talk. Now we had already had the sex talk, so this is like the career talk. This is like
the real talk, the important one.
What are you going to do with the rest of your life? That kind of talk, right? In today's world, people switch careers like 15 or 20 times. So you're not this talk isn't as prevalent today as it once was. But at one time, for you younger people listening, you had to decide, like, at grade 12, what am I doing?
A career was a career.
Which is, like, think about how dumb that was. So they sit me down and they said, and what's funny is my parents don't remember this talk. I do, though. And I remember them asking me what I want to do. And I said, well, I actually want to I wouldn't mind being a broadcaster. Like, I really like talking, and I love sports. Like, I love sport. I can pretty much watch anything. And as long as it's competition. And my mom was like going through this, like, oh, hey, That sounds really interesting. What would you like? Where would you go to school for that? Like she's doing mom things. My dad says, well, after about listening to this nonsense for 2 or 3 minutes, what you're really saying to us is you want us to support you the rest of your life.
Or live in my basement all the time.
Or live in my basement. Well, if you're going to put it that way, I guess I'll kill that dream, Dad. And listen, my dad's been so supportive of real agriculture. I tell that story like he was I don't mean to speak bad of him at all, but he's been very supportive. But that was his reaction, right? And so I always had kind of an interest in this kind of work. And if it couldn't be sports, I get, and think about it. There's a lot of sports broadcasters that starve to death. They end up selling, picking a different career because if you're Dan Schulman doing the Blue Jays broadcast, you're making a lot of money doing also college basketball for ESPN. But for every Dan Schulman, there are 1,000 people that are broke and can't feed their family. So I although I wasn't mechanically inclined, I had interest in agriculture, and I had a lot of connections in the seed industry because I had grown up in it. And so I was writing for Grain News, which is a Glacier publication. And at the time, Jay Wetter was who's now with Canola Council, Canola Digest. He was the editor. And I was writing 19 columns a year, 5,500 characters. It was some work, and they were paying me virtually nothing. And I said, hey, Jay, I need a raise. Jay said, I don't know. Let's see. I don't know, Shaun. So Jay comes back. He says, no. I said, well, I quit. Like any good entrepreneur, I've got a bird in the hand. I'm going to quit. And I'm like, you know what? So that weekend we were with some friends in Medicine Hat, drinking way too much beer. And I was like, I'm gonna buy a website. They had this at-home internet business thing. And he's like, I was telling him about the story. And he's like, you should just buy a URL and just start writing online. And I'm like, yeah, I should. And then I thought so I was hugely, because I was a finance grad, so I was hugely interested in the market. So I was a subscriber to, Jim Cramer from Mad Money?
Yep.
Yeah. So his web presence was thestreet.com, but they had a subscription service that was realmoney.com. So I was like, well, I'll just buy Real Agriculture. That's perfect. I'll just play off of that.
I was waiting for the monumental explanation, but this is not it.
So that's what I did. I bought the Real Agriculture URL on GoDaddy, and Monday morning I was posting. And that's kind of, and what's interesting is that like that weird emulation, how I ended up with that URL, really describes kind of what we've been, right? We've been sort of trying to provide what's really happening in agriculture, and from a kind of a grassroots sort of level, because at the time when I started, I was also like you're in the fields. I was in the fields, right? And I was selling, as a seed dealer, and I was doing that kind of stuff, and so it all kind of fit. So it just sort of happened. It wasn't like I went through this huge branding exercise and just sort of went with it. And thank God I didn't listen to the first 10 people I told this idea to, because the first 10 people are like, you are an idiot. One person said, whatever you do not repeat this idea to anybody else, because that is dumb. You've got a good thing going with this farm. What are you doing? And that person now is like, honestly, a huge fan. He's like, thank God you didn't listen to me.
I want to take this moment to give you a little highlight on one of our sponsors, Maverick Ag Consulting. Providing the link between primary producer agriculture and the business world. Maverick offers specialized financial and operational consulting products that allow farmers to navigate the current farming environments. Looking to take on more dirt, an expansion in equipment, or just lay down a strategic plan for the farm? Maverick provides you with specialized resources and tools to take the gut check and emotion out of decision making. If you are ready to take the next step in your farm's definition of success, reach out to maverickag.com for more details. And back to the truth about ag.
So that's the start. What's the aha moment where you're like, you know what? I'm actually doing something here. This could actually be a career.
So I started going around to farm shows. So I'm big on emulation. So there's a lot of smart people out in the world. You don't need to create, everything doesn't need to be your idea. I believe that very strongly. And there was a guy, Robert Scoble, the Scobleizer. He's a tech reporter. And he was going around to like Consumer Electronics Show, and he was taking a bunch of videos of going booth to booth. And I was like, well, that's interesting. If they can do that in tech, why the hell can't we do that in agriculture? So I got a little camcorder, and at crop production show 2010, I think it was, got a media pass and started going booth to booth. And those videos are awful. They're grainy. I am terrible.
First ones always are.
I will never watch those. And they are funny, though. And I remember a lot of the other ag media saying, I hope I never to God have to do that.
Have to do that.
Yeah. Now, all those people all have video cameras running around from show to show. And so that, in about the summer of 10, maybe it was into 11, I was at a meeting, a seed meeting, because I was still running our seed business. And a gentleman by the name of Ferdy Schneidersman, who was running Becker Underwood at the time, asked for a meeting with me. And I was like, okay, that's good. Ferdy's a good guy. He actually ran Syngenta during the when Novartis and Zeneca got together to form Syngenta. He was the interim leader of Syngenta Canada. So he was running Becker Underwood, and Ferdy just hands me this check. I was like, oh, hey, Ferdy, what's this for? This is $3,500. Okay. And I said, or I asked him, what do you want to do with this? And he's like, don't worry about it. I'm like, well, what do you mean don't worry about it? What are you talking about? Just like, what do you want me to do with this? What are you doing, Ferdy? You don't owe me any money. He said, no, Shaun, you don't understand. I just want you to keep going. I don't want you to stop. Just keep going. That's pretty awesome because he wasn't concerned about what I was doing with Becker Underwood's logos or what, he had there was no metrics at that point to warrant them advertising with us. That's like we weren't even, I wasn't even sure how we were going to monetize. He just said, put our logo in a few places, just keep going. And that was like kind of the encouragement to really, okay, this is kind of cool. Now it was probably another 12 months before anybody else wrote me a check, but at least it was sort of that moment of like, okay, this is cool. And I remember Syngenta had sponsored our canola school, and that was a much larger check at the time. And my dad coming into my office and saying like, whoa. I saw this, the controller just gave me this check that they gave you. They're paying you for this? I said, that's the whole idea, Dad. Like, they paid for advertising, for exposure, like to the audience, and explaining the whole concept of advertising to him. He's like, this is amazing. Keep going, right? Okay, now there's money involved. Now we're on.
Yeah, now you're not living in my basement.
You're not living in my basement now and just flying, and I see all these costs, and you're flying all over the country and having a great time. So I think that was a good moment. And the other one that really changed our trajectory, to be honest with you, was the opportunity to be on Sirius XM.
Okay. And
when Rural Radio 147 came to us and said, hey, we need some Canadian content. And, people said, need to talk to you. And Ben Graham from Ad Farm was a big part of making that connection, which will always be grateful for. That was a big step change. And we were like I don't know, just this thing that was like Shaun's activity, and I'd convinced some people to join me in this fun little project. The things changed. We went to Sirius because of the cost, just what that agreement looks like, and the revenue opportunity jumped for us in terms of what we could do and our exposure to a totally different audience. So
I don't want you to stay humble on this one, but how does it feel? And I know you're going to give me an easy answer, but how does it feel to actually be considered a media personality now? Because that's what you are. I mean, everybody knows you. I mean, everybody knows Real Ag. Everybody knows Rural Radio. What was that feeling of going from obviously walking around with a camcorder to now I am actually a media personality that wherever I go, people are going to actually stop and talk to me?
Yeah. So it is incredibly humbling. That's why it's also good to get out and about, to ground, maybe not to maybe grounding you is the right way to put it. Like where you're reminded who you're talking to on a daily basis. Like I think that's
not
really
just a computer.
Good. Yeah, like I think some people I think some people forget why they got into it. They forget who they're actually talking to, who their audience is, and I think it's really important to always understand what your audience is thinking and who they are. And of course, they're not one person. It's a wide trajectory and scope and scale. But I think it's really important to do that. I think it's a great honor to be able to do what I get to do on a daily basis. And people, it's not the media personality thing's not like it, that's less important. What the weight is, and maybe depending on how you deal with it, the burden is people coming to you to better understand what's actually happening. And so in this incredibly difficult world, and I know you do some great coaching as it applies to trying to help even the most successful, the upper echelon of farmer through some pretty tough times. Even the best are struggling through, depending on what the situation is, right? To be able to be a resource to help in any way possible, not the whole solution, just a piece of the solution to help people better understand, that to me is what is the most fulfilling thing about this job. It's like, it is cool. Like when you're walking around Commodity Classic and it's in Denver and some farmer from Arkansas is like, oh, hey, how's it going? Listen to the show all the time. Or, this year's top producer, which Christian has won in the past, the top producer, Mark from Colorado. He's like, oh yeah, I listen to the show all the time. Like that's kind of cool. You're like, wow, that's pretty awesome. But it's more of the responsibility of the job that's really what's just an amazing thing that I will never ever you don't get used to that.
No, and that's what I laugh is when we started this, it was never, honestly, it was just a place for us to go vent, to tell you the truth. It gave us a platform to say things that we honestly just wanted to say.
Well, how did Spit and Chicklets start?
Oh yeah,
they wanted to riff and tell some like really funny stories about things that they had done.
And that's what it was. Is we were always, what do you want to say out loud that you just can't say? And all of a sudden it was, okay, well let's just say it out loud to everybody, right? So
yeah, and I think that's the part too, Evan. To be honest with you, is the part of like. And I've said this to a few other people, is that like a lot of times people do this kind of stuff, they're not themselves.
No.
They think they have to be, and I think that's one of the keys to success is just like be yourself, be your personality, and if like you're people are going to be attracted to that. Like I probably don't do some of like if I look back at some of the dumb shit that Lindsay and I did at a few farm shows, like I wouldn't do that anymore. Like there was one where Lindsay and I were it was pouring rain at the outdoor farm show. And Lindsay has a very good sense of humor and is a lot of fun. Kelvin's more of like if you're thinking about like the news guy, like he's a little bit more straight laced. We would never convince him to do this, but Lindsay and I in the pouring rain were in a soybean tote, and it was in the Pride Seeds booth, and they had a mascot in the booth that year. And it was the mascot was a dairy cow because they were selling corn hybrids for the silage market, and the mascot's name was Penelope. Well, I had stolen I was going to give it back, but I had borrowed the Penelope's head. And in the pouring rain, we're doing a farm show wrap up, all the good things that happened at the farm show, all this kind of stuff. And then at the end I put Penelope's head on. And I remember Lindsay saying to me, "Take that off. You look ridiculous." I'm like, I don't look ridiculous. You look ridiculous for the person standing beside somebody in a cow's head. Like we would do stupid stuff like that I probably wouldn't do anymore. But we kind of maintain the fun of it all through everything.
Well, and I think that was part of it. Like I don't go back and watch the early ones anymore because honestly,
you should.
I just cringe.
You should.
And part of it was because I actually did a little prep for those. And now, honestly, I chat GPT about 5 minutes before the guest jumps on. Christian honestly just comes on 5 seconds before we start recording, to be open with anybody who thinks he's rehearsed.
That doesn't seem very EOS traction like for him not to be prepared.
Yeah, there's none. And honestly, the best stories I have from presenting was he never did. Like I used to, the first couple of years I worked with him, we'd show up to a show and both of us would be keynotes or speakers. And I'd be on the treadmill in the morning reading my notes and remembering what I was going to say on each slide.
Yeah.
And he'd show up and he's like, "Do you have the presentation for me? I don't have it." Pardon? He's like, "Well, you created it. I don't have a copy. Can you send it to me?" And it's 5 minutes before he's going on stage.
Dude, we're on the stage in 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. And that was him. And that's always been him. Like, put him in a negotiating room. For me, if anybody wants to know why I left where I left to come here, sit in a boardroom with Christian for 5 minutes. It amazes me. Things that take me a week to figure out, he just, it's there. So, I mean,
and we all prepare differently, right?
Oh, huge.
So how I prepare for a show is different than how other people, but you got to find what works for you,
yeah.
Right? I think I went through the same thing as you, where you go through stages where I would over prepare. I feel like I had to know everything. And it's just impossible. You're going to like stress yourself out to know everything. And so it's okay to once in a while if somebody from the audience says, what about this? And you don't know, it's to say, actually, good question. I have
not
no
a clue.
idea.
Yeah.
Not a clue.
And that was honestly probably the hardest part, is like, I used to present thinking I had to know everything, and you just drive yourself insane because you're waiting for that question you're not going to have the answer for, where now it's, there's lots I don't know, guys, and I'll be the first one to say it.
One of my most embarrassing moments ever was you only do this once, and then you're like, okay, learning is hard sometimes. And actually, it was funny because at Commodity Classic this year, I went out for supper with Chip Flory, host of Agri Talk.
Yep.
Him and I and Clinton Griffiths from Ag Day. And I had reminded Chip, and he's like, I remember this. My most embarrassing moment ever on radio was on Agri Talk. I remember where I was. I was in Regina at the Farm Progress Show. This was in June. And I had become a regular cast member on Agri Talk. Now I'm on there every Friday. And I had just kind of become a regular cast member, and I was still kind of cutting my teeth in policy, and and would probably was on that show way before I probably should have been. But they were very kind to me. And at the time, host Mike Adams asked me a question. They were talking about ethanol, and they were talking about E10. Mike asked me a simple question that I know the answer to today. I did not know at that time. Shaun, do you have mandatory E10 in Canada? And instead of saying, Mike, you know what? I think in some provinces we do, others we don't. But, I got to look it up. I actually don't know. Because ethanol is not talked about in Canada in the similar sort of fashion that it is in U.S. circles. That's all I had to do. What did I do? I started talking. And I couldn't stop. And when you're having that, you're talking, but you're having that inner monologue, Shaun, land the plane.
You forgot what the question was a while back.
I'm just talking. And Jim Wiesmeyer, who is a veteran, a wily veteran of ag policy circles, who has taught me more about ag policy than I'll ever know. I remember he tried to save me. He Googled. He's like, "Here, Shaun, I'll help you out." And he provides the answer. Then, as I'm like feeling like, I'm like almost want to be underneath the table. Then Mike Adams says, "Well, Shaun, I guess I'll say this. I guess you've got some homework for next week." And I was just like, I am so embarrassed. I am never going to be back on this show. I have screwed up this is so embarrassing. Everybody knows I didn't know, and I just couldn't say. I don't know. I'll never do that again.
Well, and that's why I like coming on Fridays with you, because you give me softballs. Because half the policy answers I don't have.
Well, but it's okay. It's okay to just be like, yeah, everybody doesn't know everything. Like, if everybody pretends, if somebody or somebody you listen to or you read pretends to know everything, it's impossible. They're full of shit. Like they're really, like, you should really question, should I be really believing this person as much as I do? Because it's the same thing what happens when you try to fake it. And you don't know, like, they talk about this is what happens with columnists all the time, like in mainstream papers, where they'll write about they write about all these other things, and all of a sudden they take an interest in an agricultural issue, and they write about it. And then for those of us that are in the industry, we're like, we read that article or that opinion column and you're like, that person doesn't know anything. And it makes you question, how should I feel about the other things they've been writing about things that I don't know about? Like, should I be believing them as much as I did? Like, because they don't have a bloody clue what the hell they're talking about in agriculture. So, yeah, it's fun.
So I got another question for you here, and I wrote this one down. So, what is the long-term vision of Real Ag? I mean, let's look out 5-10 years. What's the plan?
Well, I mean, you maybe join your peer group, and you can maybe help me. that may be what.
So we haven't looked out 10, is what we're saying. There's nothing written down.
Well, so not following the traction principles to the nth degree is this guy.
Yeah.
You know what? That's a really good question. So I see what I do changing and evolving, and things that I think I have the opportunity to do. Do I see a real change in the company trajectory? Not as much. How we monetize, I think is, if you look at what's happened in the past 5 years, going back 10 years, things have changed immensely. Print budgets have been declining, but they haven't just moved over to digital. They've been internalized. They've a lot. We've had a lot of mergers and acquisitions that have happened. If you look at the U.S. media industry, that Bayer Monsanto combination really had it still is an impact that's felt, because there were two large budgets that went into one. And I'll tell you this, my experience is when there's consolidation from a marketing standpoint is one company combines with another company. 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 equals usually 0.8 when it comes to the marketing budget. So both companies had large budgets. Now we're together, we're actually going to have a smaller one. And that tends to be kind of what happens. I think our evolution needs to continue to be ways to deliver information to farmers and ranchers. And so what those applications look like, those are for smarter people than me, but we're doing a lot more Instagram and things like that than we were, say, 5 years ago. And this is the hard part, is how tied do you get to some of this stuff? I'm glad we didn't really dedicate ourselves too much to Snapchat. I wish we would have dedicated ourselves more to Instagram early. Yep. We were on YouTube very early, and then I had a 3-year hiatus where I had this dumbass plan where we were going to have our own video player, and we didn't need YouTube, and we're going to create a better mousetrap, and everybody's going to come to us. Stupid. Really killed some momentum there we had on YouTube that I regret, but you can't win them all. So yeah, I think I don't have a firm answer on that, Evan, because it's hard. You think about Hebert Ventures and what it's doing today versus 5 years ago, and it's nothing's concrete.
The original napkin math was 4,000 acres. That was the goal. And exactly. Then when Jeff started, it was 16,000. That was the perfect size for multiples. That's where we were going to stop.
Yeah.
And 5 years later, we look around and it's what are we doing?
We have a team every year. Our whole team gets together in April, and we're getting together in Toronto here in middle April. I'm really looking forward to it because your question, maybe more so than some of the past years, I'm really going to put it to some of our group in terms of, okay, what do you think
this looks like?
What this looks like and where we need to go with it, because it's a lot of pressure as the entrepreneur to have all the answers for this stuff. And I was talking to Kelvin earlier today where I was I see this opportunity. I see how these pieces come together, and it all kind of magically fits. And we got the right, we would have the right person, we got the right content, the right idea. There's one thing missing. Where the hell's the money going to come? How are we going to monetize it? Because that just seems like another activity. And you kind of get to the point as an entrepreneur, I think, where the money part of it's kind of important. We don't need any more activities. We need things that make sense financially in order to justify the resources and the effort. Because there's a lot of stuff we can do. right? And sometimes we got to say no to stuff, right? So I'm really going to push on our team to let's see what this looks like. Like, what do you think? What resources do we need, or what should we? More importantly, like, what should we quit doing? That's actually one that probably we don't ask enough, right?
Yeah.
Farms go through this, like hey, we quit growing sugar beets, or we quit growing. I don't know if you quit growing potatoes, you're regretting it, but we quit doing this thing, feeding hogs or whatever it is, because it just didn't make financial sense anymore. Something changed, and that's okay.
I want to pull you away from the Truth About Ag podcast to highlight one of our sponsors, Farmer Coach, the only entrepreneurial producer coaching program in Canada that offers leadership, finance, and operational training from the dirt to the boardroom. A producer program that focuses on entrepreneurial business practices and growth. An education program that links the professional services world back to the dirt and back to production agriculture. And a mass peer group of all the participants that creates a link and knowledge of both Canadian and U.S. agriculture. For more information, reach out to us at farmercoach.ca. And now back to the podcast.
Well, it's interesting because you keep bringing up the EOS, the traction stuff. So I spent the last 3 days down in Moosomin, and that's what it was. It was our EOS quarterly, and that's exactly, honestly, everything you're saying that you're meeting with your team. That's what we did. It was okay. What are we doing? I mean, buying land is getting harder. Capital is getting harder. What's the solution? Are we going into more consulting? Are we going into more coaching? Are we using the capital we have in land and going somewhere else, right? Because cash flow, I mean, you still got to cash flow everything. So it's those discussions, right? And from a media standpoint, you're right. What's the next thing? I mean, 5 years ago, I don't think we expected Twitter to be what it is and Instagram to be what it is. So what's the next big thing, right? And I don't think any of us knows.
No, you don't. You can have theory, and I think that's the part of it though too, is being committed to, like, okay, this is important to us. This is our strategy. We're committed. We're going to move forward, but also being comfortable enough in our own skin to know, like, okay, if something changes or maybe it's different than how we saw it, we're willing to adapt and go in a different direction. I think, and a lot of times when we do have like 3-year and 5-year things that we've posted on the board, here's what we want to do. Then I know we could be better at like keeping those front and center. I think it's one of the challenges when it comes to some of that kind of stuff is, and what people get uncomfortable with it was like 10 years where it's like, well, I got no idea. Let's put something on the board. I don't know what is our big hairy ass. I really like that book.
Scaling Up.
No, 10 times.
Oh, yep.
His name's he's out of Kelowna. It's going to come to me. 10 times is easier than 2 times. And I really like that book because if you think about how do I 10 times the size of my business versus 2 times the size of my business, you think about it differently, right?
So, I have it on my shelf over there.
Who wrote his name? Dan
Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan.
Strat coach. It's strategic coach.
There you go. Okay, so yeah, okay, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. Dan Sullivan, not the guy that Kelowna. It's Dan Sullivan at Toronto. Yeah. And what I love about that book is that if you think about, okay, so how do we double the size of our business? You think about incremental changes. You think about the minute stuff. Like if we add 2 salespeople here, we would add to that. You're massaging. If you think about how do I 10 times my business, you really got to blow shit up. Yeah. Like you're thinking about different structures, you're thinking about different geographies, you're thinking about different methods, processes. I think that I really enjoyed that book because I think it really forces you as the entrepreneur or somebody that's on the leadership team to really think about the business in ways that maybe you haven't been in the past. It doesn't mean you can do it all, but at least you're going through the exercise is really valuable.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen that too. So I mean, based on the Colbys, I'm not the visionary. So I'm an entrepreneur, but I am by far not the visionary of this company. And I mean, nobody would argue with me on that. I mean,
what are you in the DISC profile?
Oh, DISC. I'd have to look.
I'm not ID. I'm the I. Like I am. All ideas and vision. Oh, so you're like you may be a C. You're an accountant, so you may be down in like the C.
I'm a 3 quick start on Colby. Like I am the lowest quick start there is.
Really?
Where Christian and Jeff in our company, they're both 9s.
So you need like numbers, and I need analysis, and
I'll build it. So no different like this podcast. This was Christian's visionary. I'm the one sitting here talking to you today.
Okay. So what is your, are you like extroverted? Are you outgoing?
I'm a hard introvert.
That's what, because this is got to be mentally exhausted. Like, and I mean that like the most, like it takes energy.
Oh, like I said, after a presentation I dive. So like I call it forced extroversion, because nobody will believe I'm an introvert, because I go and I speak and travel different cities, and you put me on stage, I'm fine. You put me in a room with 30 people I don't know, I'm the worst networker there is. I will be the one sitting in the corner with a drink. Yeah, that's not my comfort zone.
I am definitely extroverted, but I am an introverted recharger. So I do not require people to recharge. I have in date, like my wife thinks it's the oddest thing in the world. Like I'm in a city, I'll go to an NHL hockey game by myself. I like, I'm good. I'm in my own head. I've talked all day. Like all I have done is talk and entertain people and ask people questions. Like I'm spent. That's just how I roll.
And see, I would just sit in the hotel room by myself.
Well, that's
because I don't want to be around people.
But you need those compliments, right? Like,
huge.
In disc, I'm like, I'm definitely a driver, and I'm an eye, so I'm not only forging ahead, I'm like got lots of ideas, and I need some C's around me to pull me back to earth, right? Where and see, like a lot of our team are C's. They're verification and facts and like thought process. Like they're thinking through this stuff, which makes them great media people. They drive me crazy because no, I got this like those are all roadblocks, but we'll blow through that stuff. We don't worry about it. No, Shaun, we can't do it because we can't do this, we can't do that. And it's good though, because I need that. Otherwise, I would just be a reckless mess all over the place. And it's a nice compliment to them too, because when we started the radio show, we had some when we started on Sirius, we had some internal discussions about, did this make sense? And I firmly believed it. And I had some doubters on the team, and they had some good points. Like, how can we? This is daily. Like, what? Like daily? How are we going to do this? And my attitude is like, well, just figure. Like, it'll happen. Don't worry. Like, we'll sort it out. I'll just work more hours. Like, that kind of thing. And so you need those compliments on the team. I think it's really important.
You and Heebs would be very similar. Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah, deadly combo is what it sounds like. Yeah. Which of these ideas are we going to focus on? And probably in some of the clients that you coach, you see some of that where, like, there's the entrepreneur, but there's also like the team around you, and like some of those are pretty significant farms, right? And so you are working on a team, and just how you interact, and like some of our research has shown, which drives me crazy, and I think I've had this conversation with before, where when we look at learning and development, not enough farms are focusing on HR stuff.
That's not a shock. Nobody listening here better be shocked that farming is not an HR dream.
But here's the thing: is that, like, I say to people, it's like, okay, well, you may not have because what I hear back is like, oh, I don't have employees. I don't have employees. Okay, well, you work with your brother.
Yeah, that's the biggest That's the biggest HR issue in the world.
Those are the biggest pain in the asses that you work with. Yep. That's where you need these. HR is people skills, and you need, like, farms blow up because, hey, our family farm, like the part we didn't talk about, was it blew up. Like, my dad and his brothers were in court and they were fighting and basically forced land sale in 2008, right when I started Real Ag, and shit was bad, like really bad. We didn't know what we were going to do, and like this, and a part of it is they couldn't communicate with each other. Like, it was a bad family dynamic.
And that was the biggest sales pitch for EOS, like for us. I mean, and don't get me wrong, we've got a bit of a cheat card, is that I'm not brothers with Christian. and Jeff and I are not brothers. Like the way our leadership team is built, we don't have the family dynamics. We're friends,
Right.
but we don't have the same dynamics. So that's number one cheat card. Number two is once we implemented EOS, everything was a business discussion. Like if you want to get emotional, do it after hours. And I know that sounds cold, but it's exactly that. Is if you're a family farm, but you're a $10 million family farm, the emotions can't be in the boardroom because emotional decisions don't work in any business that size.
Friends can be tough though too.
Oh yeah.
Like don't get me like I know multiple friends that were in business together, and
it was my number one holdup. So when I left MNP, that not only mine but my family's. First of all, it was you're leaving a whatever $100 million company to go work on a farm, which that's number one hurdle. Number two is you're going to work with one of your best friends for the last 20 years. What does that look like? And honestly, it was in the back of my head until probably, I want to say halfway through the second year. We were having an L10 meeting, which is just a communication meeting. We meet every Monday.
Yep.
And I deserved it. And I was bringing a whole bunch of problems and with absolutely no solutions. And I've wrote about this and I've said it a million times. He looks at me, he goes, if you're going to bring a dead cat, bring a shovel. And that was the line. It was, if you're going to bring a whole bunch of problems, start bringing a freaking solution.
Right.
And it, like, we went back and forth at it. And I drove home and I had let's call it my butt hurt. And I hated him for an hour. And then I literally looked around and said, what am I doing? Like, this is a business. And that's what it was. And I woke up the next morning and it was like, okay, here's 5 solutions and let's go.
And there's also a piece there. And I think of Lindsay when I say this. There's times in front of the team, Lindsay and I have got into immense conflict. I'm emotional, she's emotional. And we're talking, but it could come across as like
fighting.
What the hell are these two doing? Right? And I know what her buttons are and she knows what my buttons are, and she's my work wife. Like I love her to death. I owe so much of our success to her. And we had done some as a team. We did some disc training,
disc profiles.
Yeah. And we had a guy come in, do the workshop, and it was like, of course, there's the piece of it that was important is like, what are you? But the more valuable part is, okay, how does my personality interact with Evan?
Yep.
What I found interesting when we did that was I realized some of the things, because of the personality profiles of different members on the team, I realized some of the things that I was doing, how it was causing them angst and frustration, not because they didn't like me, it was because of their personality style. And so we went through this whole workshop. It was unbelievable. Highly recommend all teams do that kind of stuff. It sounds very soft and wishy-washy, and we got shit to do on the farm. It works. It's very good. We still talk about it today. But in that workshop, Lindsay and I got into a big conflict, and I can't remember what it was even about. And it was right before the workshop because we alluded to it. And somebody on the team had said to the facilitator, I know what you're talking about here from a communication, because before I was very uncomfortable with Shaun and Lindsay arguing. They just brought it up. And what Todd had said was they have trust equity. So they can get into a battle like that because there's a foundation there of trust. Right? And you think about Lencioni's pyramid, right? Mm-hmm. There's trust there. So that trust allows them to have that level of conflict. Yep. And they're working themselves to a better resolution because of it. Now, if you don't have that trust, you can't have that conflict because you're missing part of the foundations of that triangle. And that's very true. Like in the situation you gave, there's a relationship there. There's immense trust between the two of you. And without that trust, you couldn't have that level of conflict.
Oh, no. And that, like you said, the triangle, I mean, it's trust, commitment, conflict, accountability, and results, I think were the 5 steps.
Yeah.
And we go through that with our team because it's like, sometimes there's a certain person you can have that conflict with and it will actually have positive results. And some people, you don't have that trust in place right now. It won't have positive results. It'll have negative results.
Yeah. Yeah. I think more farms really could, of all shapes and sizes. There's a couple things. One is the relationship management, and the other, I know this is close to your heart,
Oh God.
is financial literacy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, nothing gets a more squirmy response from audiences is when I say that farm financial literacy needs to improve. That's uncomfortable. You need to have trust equity with your audience at a keynote in front of a bunch of farmers to say that. Let me tell you, that is one where people get quite defensive.
Yep.
And we had just done with Cappy in January, we had just done some surveying about risk, management of risk. And I think it was like 85% of farmers said they have a financial budget to help manage the financial risks. And I put up my hand. I bullshit.
Oh, 100% bullshit.
There is no way. I do not believe it.
The TPAP stats, I think, are like below 60. And that's of TPAP.
And listen, that's not just a farmer thing.
Oh, no.
I'm in a business peer group through Tech Canada. It's entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And not even entrepreneurs. Like I must have missed the budgeting class in high school because I'm pretty sure they don't have one. Like it's not there.
Yeah. And the attitude a lot of times is, well, like, how do I know what's going to happen? We just got to like do our thing, and if it works out, it works out. And then it's obviously you get a whole theoretical discussion about this, but that's really, I think, the two areas where, and I know, like Christian says all the time, and I agree, like some of the biggest threats to our industry are policy and regulations. I think in Canada,
and HR.
And I think if you think about the policy and regulation stuff, I think also in Canada specifically, I think the U.S. farmer is a little bit more in tune with policy. Their politics kind of dictate the structure of that. Yep. They're always in election mode. Electoral college presents that opportunity. I think in Canada, we really do need to up our game in terms of the understanding of some of the impacts of some of the stuff that is much deeper than what we have now. Conservatives good, liberals bad. It's not that simple. So,
well, I probably realized that once we started having quite a few of the U.S. in the Farmer Coach program was like not only on the policy side of the difference, but like you get into marketing, for example, because we had the wheat board for so many years, the marketing across the border is incredibly more advanced than anything we have here. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the larger farms can hedge correctly and sell, and even some of the small farms, they're good at it. But that's a very small percentage of actual total farms that actually know how to properly market, hedge, puts, options, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then on the agronomy side, it's exact opposite because the U.S. has the subsidy programs they have. When we start talking agronomic and nutrient packages and soil sampling and all that stuff, north of the border is considerably ahead of south of the border from what I've seen. And that's just my opinion, but that's what's coming across.
Yeah, I think there's fairness to that. That's, we're broad brushing it, of course, but I learned this, I remember one time being at the Montana Grain Growers meeting, and I've always thought kind of like, there's some cool stuff happening in the U.S. from a practice perspective. And there were 3 farmers on my panel, and it was like, oh, Saskatchewan, that's the land of innovation. You guys are doing some cool stuff, like special crops. Like, why haven't we been growing lentils and chickpeas and all those kinds of things? So there is a bit of a grass greener approach here. But, I always said, like, it's been kind of amazing to watch the last 11 years of marketing freedom in Western Canada. I grew up on a feed yard where you don't survive if you are not using derivatives to manage risk. You're hedging the Canadian dollar. You're doing like call put and options and like exotic shit that some broker sold you, and you're doing all this kind of stuff. You would not survive without it. And then you compare that to the cropping sector, and the industry fought tooth and nail. People went to jail over I want to be able to sell my wheat and board grains when I want to. Okay, great. Noble cause.
Now what?
And now what? I've compared it this way to, like in a pen of cattle, they work as a group to do their darndest to get out of the pen. Like, how are we going to get to the other side of this gate? And then they bust through the gate, and then they all stand on the other side of the fence, and they all look and say, now what? And that's kind of what our marketing has been, is that we have to move that sophistication forward in terms of using different tools. And that's not a criticism. It's a change in culture. It's a change in, like, I think it's a bigger load. I think we underestimated the load. We were so focused on the marketing change and the option that we really underestimated the work and education required to move people to that next level of marketing besides just production contracts.
And that's where I was going to go, is there's just the education component of it is just not there. And I mean, there's lots of great brokers out there, but then you get involved in some of the spec. And I mean, there's a lot of bad stories with a lot of brokers as well. So I think there's just been a lot of trust issues plus a lack of education for guys to take that step. So you're right. Other than futures contracts, I mean, right now, canola, with what it's done over the last few weeks, I'd have been buying buying it on paper and waiting it out, because I think there's a bullish market right now. So, but that's my opinion, and don't take it. Nobody would go out there and do what I'm saying, but
right.
That's the theory, is that you're looking for opportunities, and I don't think that happens. I think guys are just, I'm going to sell it this month because I need cash flow, and the price is going to be X. And the worst part is I don't even know if my cost of production meets that number.
Right. And this is where you need the disclaimer. The thoughts and comments made by the guests on the Truth About Ag podcast is not the thoughts and opinions of Herbert Ventures. I
have got enough hate. I'm good with it. That might have been the sharpest learning curve of doing this, to be open with you, Shaun, is just, I just learned to ignore. I used to bother me. It doesn't bother me anymore.
You can't.
You can't.
That's hard, though. Like that.
It's hard. Really hard.
Like I cannot imagine being like a politician and seeing some of the things
that are written about you. Oh, I know.
And I'll tell you, like, some of the like journalists on TV and stuff, some of the things that are said, and it is way worse for female journalists. That's pretty much a fact. I think from my perspective, it used to bother me too. I feel like I had to say things that pleased everybody. You kind of got to get over that. I try to be respectful of everybody, but you're not going to please everybody. And, there's times that I'll say something and someone's been a long time listener, and like right now with everything going on, it's like, you just don't seem like you're supporting Canada enough. It's like, I think my record of sticking up for Canada
should stick up.
So I'll just stand behind my record, and you be you and I'll be me, and it's okay.
Yeah. And the part that isn't public is we get a million DMs from guys liking certain things we're saying or liking what we're doing. And those are what just keeps you moving forward, right?
Yeah. Well, I think 100%. And that's one of the things that's really changed about social. A lot of these conversations used to happen out in the open through social media.
They don't anymore.
Nope. Yeah, they don't. I even notice it on LinkedIn. I'll get DMs from people that's like, hey, I really appreciate this interview, and they could easily say that in the comments, and they don't, because it's maybe politically something they shouldn't be commenting on based on their role. And
they just don't want the kickback, right?
Because people are crazy. You right. That's a life, like lesson. A surety that I have is that people are nuts. There's a guy who he kind of quit for a bit here, but for a period of time, every Friday on AgriTalk, he would send me like a rating. Like, okay, like you were this bad today. You were this shitty today. Like it was after about 3 or 4 in a row, he was like, okay, today I agreed with you. You're good. And then the next week we're back to, you're terrible. Like it was just, you just got to laugh about it. And
the funny part for me is I finally blocked a couple just because I'm like, I don't want to read it anymore. And then I had clients that would take screenshots and send it to me. Just like, no, stop.
I thought we were friends. It's, and I think this, hey, listen, I'll read audience feedback of, like, I just don't read audience feedback that's like pro what I said. Like I read all the time stuff that people disagree with, and I think it's cool. Like honestly, you don't.
That's the point. You're supposed to be able to disagree.
Well, hey, and think about it. Like, it's like I was trying to think how you would frame it, but like, think about, like, I heard Howard Stern say one time, like, half the audience is listening because they absolutely love everything I do and say, and they think I'm hilarious. And the other half is listening because they hate me so much. And like, and you don't try to create that kind of a wedge, but it's okay.
It's there.
Like, It's just sort of, that's life.
All right, sir. I've had you for over an hour now, Shaun. So I just want to finish with one question, and then I'll let you get back to your Thursday.
This is like the bottom line.
This is the bottom line. So you've done so much with Real Ag, and you've obviously got so many channels, and you've been a whole bunch of places. Somebody 20 years from now, what in your eyes would be success if they said about Real Ag? What do you want people in 20 years to look back and say Shaun Haney did with Real Ag?
Oh man.
I went deep. I went real deep.
So 20 years from now.
20 years, you're retired by that time. Come
on. Yeah, I could be. Will I be though? That's the problem.
I don't know.
I don't know if I will be. Yeah.
With inflation, I might not be either, so we're good.
Well, this is true. This is true. How this federal election's going, I don't know if we'll ever retire. I think. What do I think one of the greatest compliments would be, it kind of gets back to what I said earlier, that we were a resource that made a difference for them. That whether it had to do with farm management or some of the other, like the topical stuff that we do, the current event, like in some form or fashion, we help them get through some shit that they were dealing with. Now that could be small stuff like, hey, should I use liquid versus dry fertilizer? Or, I had a great conversation the other day with Elaine Fraze about succession we're going to post. And that's heavy stuff. And so did that conversation that we talked about with farm succession and about procrastination, did that help somebody in a family as they shared that interview and that discussion amongst themselves? Did that help them get to the other side of their family farm succession? That's a bigger topic.
Yep.
And just think about the millions of dollars that we assisted that farm in making by not breaking up, like my family farm did.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, that's like, whether it's small or it's big, just people including us in that reflection of making a difference for them personally, that I think that's the most rewarding thing I could ever ask for.
Good answer. All right, sir. I appreciate you coming on and my last minute call up. So,
well, hey, for being the bottom of the barrel, this has been a lot of fun. There's so many different topics and stuff going on. I will come on anytime, and congratulations with the great podcast you guys are doing. Fantastic. It's great to have you on our Real Ag network and things that we're doing. I get a lot of really good comments about the podcast and people saying, like, I'm so glad that you added that podcast to the network. I really appreciate it. It's a different voice, a different angle. Like, it's not, it's not just an extension of what I think. It's you guys have your own perspectives, and I think that's awesome. And that just adds to the conversation. So keep up the great work and congratulations, and just keep on rocking it.
No, and we much appreciate the collaboration, and I'm much appreciative to not talk tariffs or policy for at least an hour and 5 minutes. So
you and I both. I am tariffed out.
Yeah.
Man.
So again, like, share, comment, subscribe, and remember, that's the truth about ag. Thanks for joining us. The Truth About Ag podcast is a proud member of the Hebert Group, which includes Hebert Grain Ventures, Maverick Ag, and Farmer Coach. We appreciate the support. Lastly, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you have questions for a future podcast, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for listening.